copywritten production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.
Oktoberfest, yes. All right. Are we ready to get started? It sounds like we are. Okay. So, my name is Karen McAdam, and I am here today in my capacity as the chair of the Elections Committee. So the Board of Directors has a number of standing committees, the Elections Committee being one of those. And I'd like just to recognize two of my colleagues on that committee, Mike Wendell and Tom Barone, are over here on the side. So members that have volunteered their time to help make sure that the Elections Committee, which handles events like this, does its job. So we're kind of in the final phases of the election season here. Just, what is it, about 6 weeks away from having to have candidates having their packets submitted, which really kicks off then the whole season that culminates with the election on the second Tuesday of December. So a warm welcome to all, and especially a cordial thanks to my board colleagues who are here. So the board of directors actually consists of 9 people. This is not a mandatory event, but I'm very pleased that there are 6 of us who are here today who are just willing to share our experiences, our impressions, and to answer our questions in a casual sort of a way. We don't have prepped answers to all the questions that you might have, but it's a chance to maybe even hear some dissenting views from people who are here. So thank you also to the folks over here who are making sure that this is available for anybody who might like to watch it on YouTube afterwards. So just a little warning, it is put up on our YouTube channel and available for other members or other people to see. So let me just give you a little bit of an overview of what we expect for today. So we're going to introduce ourselves. We're going to ask our potential candidates to introduce themselves, again, very casually, and we'll go over some basic things about board service, and we'll open it up to questions and just take it from there. I also just want to say a thank you to Marcia Johnson, who's sitting in the back here. Marcia is the executive coordinator for the board, and she is the person who handles all of the logistical things about picking up packets and answering questions if you have questions about dates and responsibilities and requirements and that sort of thing. So I thought it would be nice for us to begin by introducing ourselves. And Preston, let's start with you down there, and we'll just work our way down this way. And you might let us know what stage of board service you're in, and maybe a word or two about things that intrigue you about this board.
How much time do we have? My name is Preston Keiss. I was elected to the board starting the beginning of this year, so I have 2 more years of servitude after this. There's so much more that goes on when you become a member of the board than you ever thought was there. I didn't understand the time commitment that was necessary when you become a board member, and I'm just starting to get in tune with that now. So it's a learning process. And I've been really fortunate to have a couple of people on the board with Karen and with Kat that have been really, have a lot of knowledge that have been able to help guide me and other members along. It's good to have someone that can kind of shepherd you and help you avoid as many pitfalls as possible, because there have been some and there will be some. But overall, it's been a great experience, and I'm really glad that I decided to run for election, and I'm even happier that I was elected.
I'm Connie Rickmeyer. I also was elected the same time that Preston was. I really find that the board and all of our standing committees, and as a board member you become the chair or co-chair, really gives you an opportunity to learn more about how the rec centers of Sun City are run, and also using your skill set. So my skill set is a lot of construction, design background, that type of thing. So I've asked to be on the properties committee, bids and contracts committee, group, and just a number of committees that I felt would, my strong points, my strong suits would be able to benefit. It's, is it always smooth sailing? No, but the nice thing is we have a number of people with variety of opinions, and being able to talk that out, you can figure out what it is that what your stance is and what you believe in and what you want to work towards.
Thank you. I'm Kat Fimmel, and I'm in the last 4 months of my 3-year term here on the board. Let me first thank you for indicating your interest on wanting to be on the board of directors. I will tell you it is the hardest job you will ever love. And it's your opportunity to help your neighbors. It's your opportunity to impact the future of this corporation and to ensure its future. And we hope to see you on Election Day.
So as I mentioned, I'm Karen McAdams. So in addition to my role on the election committee, I'm also the vice president of the board, and I'm in the last few months of my second term. So a term is 3 years, once renewable, for basically a total of 6 years. I'm sure you'll ask some questions about what kind of a time commitment you're looking at, and we'll be able to delve into that a little bit more. It obviously depends on what kinds of hot button issues there are, but sometimes we're surprised by hot button issues. My own rationale for running for the board a while back was that in my other life, I had been asked to serve on a board, and it's just my personality to say, okay, what is the role of a board member? How are boards supposed to work? And I kind of took a deep dive into the whole concept of board governance. As a matter of fact, I have a whole shelf full of books in my living room on board governance. If anybody wants to borrow them, I'm happy to share them. And so when the idea came up, and I thought, oh, this would be something that would actually match a little bit my background in history. So that's what brought me to this. I think that when it comes to a brief description of what this board does, we are an oversight board, and one of the greatest difficulties that we have is actually separating out operational management from board oversight. And it's very, very easy for any board to get into the weeds about stuff and to try to figure out solutions, and that's something that we're constantly having to check ourselves on. So my own view of things is that the board, while being responsible for everything that happens here, right down to what kind of light bulbs we have up on the ceiling here, that we actually delegate everything to a general manager except for a few things. And the 3 things that I think of that we maintain for ourselves are what board policies are, or bylaws / policies. That is our purview entirely. Compliance reporting, which means checking to make sure, so when we delegate to the manager, we don't just say, we're done with that, it's your job. We actually check to make sure that it's being done. Compliance, and then also just a self-monitoring of ourselves, asking ourselves how we're doing. So that, in a nutshell, is my own view of board oversight. And I guess I'll leave it at that. So, Chris, over to you.
Hi, I'm Chris Nettisheim. I was, basically I retired from work on March 1st, and in the process of retiring, there were openings on the board due to resignations, and I put my name forward, and I was appointed to the board. So basically, I retired, and then I started this job. And this job is a time commitment. not wanting to scare anybody away, but it does require more time than you expect. And I had watched the board through the technology committee for some years, and still the amount of time it took surprised me. So there's definitely a time commitment. And I had actually indicated that I was interested in running for the board in 2025, for 2024, 2025. And that's when I found out there were openings. So the reason I'm interested in being on the board is I care passionately about the communities I've lived in. I've been a volunteer all my life. I was a PTA president, neighborhood chair for Girl Scouts, ran a support group at work for test leads who were trying to learn and improve. My background is in technology. So I really care about the communities I live in, and I care about how we run the communities I live in. For me, it's important. And with that in mind, as I become more involved with the board, it is far more challenging because it's easy to step into the weeds, and there are many times that we get questions that kind of inches into the weeds. And so we're constantly level setting as a board, that we are actually in the right place, working in the right manner. So for me, it's it's finding that balance has been my biggest challenge, and I'm constantly asking myself, Karen talked about it, I'm constantly asking myself, is this the right thing to do? So anybody who becomes a board member, I think, would be faced with the same thing. It's just, where is that line and what do you do? With regard to the community, I would like to see our community maintain where we're at and maybe perhaps move a little bit forward. We're second generation. My in-laws had a house back in the 80s, and we inherited it. And seeing Sun City through the iterations has been fascinating. And I would love to see the Sun City that my in-laws had, where everybody's actively engaged. So for me, getting people involved, seeing you guys here, being willing to run for the board, that's wonderful. So.
Well, my name is Tom Foster, and our goal here today is to encourage you to run, not scare you away. So all of this talk about time commitments, don't worry about that. It does take a little bit of time, but if you're interested in doing it, I think the time, you'll find the time that you need to do. My background was in accounting and finance and investments, and not surprisingly, I've wormed my way into those things on the board. So I work with the Finance, Budget, and Audit Committee. I work with the Long Range Planning Committee, Insurance Committee, Investments Group, and Marcia will probably tell me I'm on several others that I'm forgetting. But the main reason I got involved, and I too, like Chris here, was appointed to the board. So in a couple weeks, I'll be sitting over there too, because I'll have to rerun for if I want to stay. But the reason that I decided to get involved was, like a lot of folks, I think you want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I think if you don't make some effort to get involved in what's going on in your community, then it's pretty hard to debate or be critical of how things are if you're not willing to step up and be part of that solution. So I think that's why I'm here, is I hope that I can bring some semblance of rationality maybe sometimes, but some experience in the real world of finance and investments and other areas as well. And I'm sure you guys probably have some of those similar types of experiences that you can bring, and I'm sure you'll find a niche if you're elected to the board.
All right, we'll turn this over to you now. Can you introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of a...
Is this on? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mark Crashell. I've lived in Sun City for about 8.5 years, my wife and I. And when I decided to retire, Sun City was the last place I wanted to move to, because we lived in Phoenix for 3 years, from 03 to 06. And when it was time to retire in 2015, I says, geez, I want to move back to Phoenix, but I don't want to live with all those old people. Guess what? I'm one of those old people now. So this has been one of the best moves we ever made, and I just feel like I'd like to see Sun City continue in what it is, and maybe even improve a little bit along the way. My background, for what it's worth, is college educated in accounting and business management. Most recently, the job I retired from, I had 300 direct employees and about 1,000 indirect employees. I was responsible for facilities in multi-states, mainly warehousing and distribution. I was a subcontractor for PepsiCo. I managed the West Coast supply of Gatorade and Quaker Foods, which included policies such as HR, safety, compliance, construction, lease negotiations, all that kind of neat stuff. I don't have a lot of questions, so I don't know if you want the other gentleman to introduce himself or just, I got the floor, I keep it. Well, I'm going to go to my second question first because each one of you touched on it.
Actually, could we wait on your questions
Sure.
for a minute and let you both introduce
Okay.
yourselves, and then we'll come back to the questions, okay?
I have to do that? Oh. Hello, I'm David Vandernalt. Let's see, what do I want to tell you? I'm just completing a full-time job recovering from cancer. I have 2 months to go until I have my final test to make sure I'm cancer-free, so that's a good one. I am on the board of directors for the Sun City Fire and Medical. I have been on for 4 years, and I was just elected for another 4 years. So between those two things, I'm looking for possibly something else to do. I'm also a full-time caregiver to a handicapped wife, so I have things that I have to do, but there's other things I want to do, okay? My last working position was I was the Chief Information Security Officer for the state of Arizona, and I headed up the statewide information security and privacy group. I worked for Governor Napolitano, and when she left, I left also. So I've done that. I was the Chief Information Security Officer for the City of New York pre, during, and post 9/11. So I was very deeply involved with that. That's my background. You know, I'm just a guy who wanders around. I came over just to hear what you guys have to say. I have no questions. There is one other thing. More than 10 years ago, I served on the Long Range Planning Committee for 2 years, and I served on the Finance Committee for 2 years. So I haven't. And I did both of those things because I wanted to understand how RCSC works. So I did that and then decided I would go and do something else. So, okay? I have no specific questions. I just wanted to hear what you guys had to say.
Okay, maybe I could just, before we get to your questions, which are important to us, but maybe just give you some basic information here about a few things that may answer some of your questions, maybe is just extraneous to what you really want to know. We do have something called a candidate packet, and I'm going to ask Marcia to talk a little bit about that. For anybody who's interested in actually running for the board, we have a packet that you can pick up. You have to show your identification downstairs and be verified as a member in good standing, at which point Marcia will give you a packet. And can you tell us a little bit about that packet?
Yeah, there's a packet that has some information, general information in it about your, do I need a microphone?
No, you're good.
Talk pretty loud. May want to watch it.
Okay. Okay, there is a packet you can pick up. You have to give us your member card and a driver's license, and we can get you a packet downstairs. And basically what's in it is, on one side, there's information that needs to be returned to me about yourself, conflict of interest form, a petition that you need 100 signatures of to be able to even qualify for a candidate that we would verify. We have to have that by October 18th. And then the other side is information that's just for you about the whole election process, dates, information I would need from you, just a whole bunch of different information that would be just helpful to you. And then my card is in there, and you can always call me if you have any questions whatsoever.
You've done this before.
I have. 9 years.
Yeah, I might just elaborate a little bit on this 100 signatures that to some people seems like a pretty high bar. It's actually not. So what you're looking for are 100 people that are members in good standing, so not privileged card holders, but actual owners here. And you can tell them this is not a commitment that you will vote for me. This is simply a signature saying that I've been out in the community, I've been talking to people about running for office, and would you be willing to sign my what do we call it? Sign my sheet. You need to have 100 verified signatures. So in that process, there's some people that collect these in a matter of hours and some people that spend a little bit longer doing it. There usually are some people who sign that who are not eligible to, so people that are privileged card holders or for whatever reason they're delinquent with their property assessments or something. It's usually good to shoot for about 120 of those. And also not to wait until the very last minute, because Marcia and her team do have to verify those signatures, and if you don't turn them in until noon on October 18th and you thought you had 100 and you only have 98, that would be too bad. So that's just a little piece of information to try to work on that. We as board members are happy to sign your sheets for you as well. So, if you're interested in doing that afterwards, Marcia is available downstairs if you want to pick up a candidate packet, and if you hurry, you might catch us all before we leave. Okay? All right, but the next big date that you need to know is that these candidate packets have to be returned and your candidacy essentially verified and approved by noon on October 18th. Then there are quite a few dates after that, and I won't tell you what those all are now because it's all in the packet. So you have a candidate orientation session. You have an opportunity to make a video that will be played in all of the rec centers and golf courses and so forth. That is a 2-minute video for you to kind of make your elevator speech about why you're running and why you hope that people will vote for you. And there are just a variety of things like that that kind of cluster together. And then there are, once we're about ready to begin the online voting season, there are 2 candidate forums in the Sundial Auditorium, which is when all the candidates are on stage, and it's basically a 2-hour period of time where members of the community are allowed to come up and ask questions of the candidates. So you'll find out what all those dates are, but it is important to make sure that if you follow through on this, that you actually pencil those dates into your calendar so that you know that, because some of them are sort of non-negotiables. Okay? Then I wanted to just speak to the conflict of interest question. So there is something that you sign there, and I think this is probably self-explanatory, but there has been some confusion about this in the past. A conflict of interest does not mean that if you really, really, really love to do lawn bowling, that you're not allowed to speak into any decisions about lawn bowling that might come up before the board. That is not a conflict of interest. It's not an inherent conflict of interest. So I always try to point out that there are 2 components to this. One, it has to be a material one. Usually that means there's some kind of financial benefit that accrues to you. And the second is it has to actually be a conflict. The thing that you're proposing would actually be damaging to the corporation, but it would be personally enriching to you. So just want to get that out there. The fact that, we have had, for instance, very avid golfers serve on the board. We don't ask the golfers not to speak into decisions about golf. They know more about golf than anybody else does, right? So it's not a conflict of interest to talk about something that you like to do. I think that's basically as much as I wanted to say right now. So let's turn this over then to your questions. Mark, you have some. I'm not sure about David, but maybe some questions will arise in the process of this conversation.
I don't have a lot, but how many board members are leaving?
There will be 5 openings. So the way that works is that every year there are 3 board members whose term ends. And for any of them, so if it's your second term, you're done. If it's your first term, you can run for a second term. The reason that we have 5 is that we had 2 resignations of board members. And when that happens during a year, the board appoints people to take their place, which is what Chris and Tom referred to earlier.
They're counted in that 5.
Yes, so they were appointed to the board. So I'm finishing a term and not running again. Kat is finishing a term and not running again. And Anita, at the last election, there were actually 4 spots open, and she got the 4th highest number of votes. So the top 3 vote getters each got a 3-year term, and she got a 1-year term. So she's an elected member of the board as opposed to being an appointed member of the board, but planning to run for re-election. So there are actually 5 spots. So when the voting time comes around, all the paper ballots will have a space for 5 check marks or 5 names, and the same is true for the online balloting.
That seems like a high percentage of turnover. Question being, who's going to hold the hand of the new people if 5 are leaving?
Well, as I just mentioned, of the 5 spaces that are open, only 2 people are leaving. The other 3 have to candidate; they have to win an election. But that is a very good question. I mean, it's something that people that talk about the philosophy of board governance often discuss. You have term limits for reasons. There are good defensible reasons for having term limits, one of them being that sometimes you feel like you need a little bit of new blood. But it's also, would you tell a teacher after 6 years of teaching, well, we need new blood, so we're going to take you out and bring in a brand new teacher into the classroom? You lose something by doing that too, don't you? And it is true that if we have, a limit of essentially 6 years that you can serve, it's quite possible that you don't have the same level of institutional memory and institutional history that you would have if you didn't have term limits. But that's the way we're set up in our Articles of Incorporation as well. Very difficult to change those. I would say that one of the things that helps to balance that is that we do, as a board, we have about a dozen standing committees, and these committees are all chaired and co-chaired by a board member. But there are people on these standing committees. So when David mentioned that he had served on the long-range planning and finance and budget, I think you said, right? Those are 2 of the standing committees. There are people on there that have been on those committees for more than 20 years. So there is a certain level of depth on our standing committees that might not actually exist at the board level itself.
And it is really a concern for us that know we're going to be on the board because we're losing great corporate knowledge. Steve Collins has been on the board for a while, so he'll be with us. Jim Ruff is in his second year on the board because he was appointed to a 1-year term. And then there's Connie and me that just started this year. So we're losing a lot of knowledge. But I don't think that people like Karen and Kat, they care about a lot about our community. So I don't think, even though they're not on the board, if we have questions, we won't hesitate to ask them. We also have Marcia and other people that have been senior leaders in the corporation for a while that have a lot of depth of knowledge. So there's a lot of avenues that we can get information from, even though not all of it will be on the board.
This might be a little leading of a question, but it seems like over the last year that there seems to be a little friction between the board and the hired management, like management changing policies without board knowledge. I guess, is that sustainable? How do you fix it?
Well, part of what's going on over the past 2 years is a transition away from what the board was before, which was a very closed process. This board, last year's board, opened things up for the members. Previous times, if you wanted to see a financial document, the answer would have been no. Last year, we not only allowed the members to, or permitted the members to see the financial documents, we invited them to participate in the financial meetings and to even comment in them. That will happen again this year. We're just now beginning the budget process for 2025. The general manager is kind of new. He's been with us for a little less than a year. He's coming into a new situation that may have been difficult based on the people that were in the general manager position before him. I will say that he has probably done more for this corporation in the last year than has been done in the several years previous to that. You're actually able to see the changes that he's making that are positively impacting the community. Things are getting done. I won't bore you with the things that weren't being done before he arrived. That was one of the reasons that perhaps the former general manager is no longer with us. So I think he's making a significantly positive impact on the corporation and the community.
I'd agree with most of that. It just seems like the board got blindsided on things like library closures, fans at Bell, punch cards, golf cart shuttles, things like that. It just seems like every meeting that I watch online, it just seems like the board keeps getting blindsided. Then it becomes a meeting where everybody stands in line and gripes about it. It seems like there's a disconnect somewhere. And from an outsider looking in, it's hard to put a finger on it.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that, too. It is true that anytime you have somebody that comes in, I mean, our general manager felt like he had been hired to be a change agent and to get things done, that, you're always balanced by this effort to accomplish things and sometimes, not being the bull in the china shop. And we as a board realized that we actually had a systemic failure on our part in that we had never clearly identified what areas belong to the scope of activity of the general manager without board input, without a board, the right to veto, without board knowledge, as opposed to, there's a lot of things that happen when they switch out a faucet in the ladies' bathroom up here. They don't have to come to the board and ask us to do that. We don't want to know anything about it, just take care of our facilities like that. But where, you get into areas where there is a line where you say, does the general manager have the right to do this in the absence of board interface? And we kind of divide that up. Do you want the board just to be knowledgeable about it? Do you want the board to be able to have input into it? And do you want the board to be able to have a veto right over that? And we actually have come up with a document that just recently has been put into effect that has, about 35 different lines where the board has said in these areas, this is what the board expectation is in each of, so some of those, it's just GM, and no board knowledge, input, or veto rights. There are some things that are quite different than that. And so we have had a conversation with our general manager about that to try to prevent this sort of thing from happening in the future. So I would say that that's actually learning by doing. We realized that we had a weakness in that area, and we've tried to address it by implementing a matrix that helps us all to know who gets to do what without somebody else's input.
It sounds like it's been resolved.
We will see.
And when you give the members a voice, you have to be willing to hear what the members have to say. Sometimes what they say doesn't really reflect what's going on, but you still have to have a willingness to hear what the members have to say.
Last question, and everybody touched on the time commitment here. So what's a typical day look like, typical week, typical month? What's that look like? A full-time job, if I remember, it was like 2,040 hours. So how does that compare to the reality?
Let's just go right down the line here, and you'll get to hear everybody's own little perception of the time commitment.
There's plenty of time for golf, don't worry about it. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, you're going to be involved in probably committee activities and other board-sponsored or Sun City-sponsored events. But Mondays and Fridays, we try, it doesn't always work, but we try to kind of leave those open so that, well, one, you get a 4-day weekend, and that's good for golf. But it's also time for you to prepare for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday if you need to. So if you're involved in finance, budget, and audit, for instance, and you have a committee meeting coming up that week, there would be adequate time for you to see the agenda and in meeting materials and be prepared to participate materially in that particular meeting. So yeah, there is some commitment, as everyone has talked about, but everybody finds a way to fit everything else in around their commitment to the Sun City Board. So, and I'm confident that you will do the same.
Should be a politician. I didn't hear an answer.
I've been a professional witness way too long.
So I will say the second and third weeks of the month are busy. As Tom said, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are busy. We have 4 meetings that we are committed to: the exchange, the board meeting, an information session with the manager, and a forecast session with the general manager. So the forecast meeting is one that has been recently added to help us with your previous question. So those are committed. On a general week, the first week of the month, I will say I average somewhere between 18 and 22 hours. On the second and third week, I will say I'm closer to 40. And on the fourth and half of whatever is the week, I'm down back to about 20, 25 hours. So we all have commitments. We're all committed to committees. So depending how many committees you have, and then there's the other thing where you go in and listen because you want to hear what's going on in some of the committees. That's not required. That's a personal choice. So I choose to go to finance. I choose to go to long-range planning. I choose to go to a couple of other ones that are not my committees, so I'm not chairing or co-chairing them. So that's kind of where that fits. So that's my balance of where I'm at right now. I'm looking for efficiencies. We do have a computer we can take home and work if we need to. But a lot of us, with this board specifically, it tends to come into the office because we're sitting there working. And this board, or at least it feels like to me, this board is definitely more cohesive than I have seen other boards that I've been part of where it can be pretty fractured, especially when you have lots of people with lots of expertise and strong opinions about things. So
time-wise, I would say that there isn't really a standard answer that would fit over a long period of time. It depends, and I'm not saying that because I'm a politician, but because that's actually the truth. So for instance, a year and a half ago, our GM resigned. Well, we as a board were responsible for finding and hiring a new GM. So right from the get-go, how do we approach that? Are we going to try to do an internal hire? Are we going to try to have a company come alongside us? If so, what company do we choose? You meet with that company. Hours upon hours upon hours of additional time that were added to our other schedule because that is the board's responsibility. So that sort of thing can take you by surprise a little bit. Typically, any board member is going to be assigned to about 4 of the board standing committees. So if we have a dozen of those, and I'm not sure what the exact number is right now, but times a board chair and a co-chair, that's 24 positions that end up getting divided up by 9 people. You're going to be in, and then there are some commissions on top of that and a few other things as well. So those standing committees, at a very minimum, will be meeting once a month. Depending on the committee, it may be that it will meet beyond that. Last year, there was an ad hoc committee that was called into existence to be a member sounding board for the renovations at the Mountain View Center. They met every Friday afternoon from May until September. That is an ad hoc committee, so that just comes on top of everything else. And ad hoc committees can pop out of nowhere, so there are variations. I would say that for myself, I'm probably looking at 25 hours a week is pretty normal if you're looking for a number of hours. I will say, though, that this is a reflection of the kind of board we are as opposed to the board when I first joined it. When I first joined the board, there wasn't even really an expectation that you would check your emails more than every 2 or 3 days. Now it's almost unimaginable for any of us to not check our emails on a daily basis, with the possible exception of the weekends. So you do get a board-issued laptop, and you will use it a lot. So just to give you an idea, and another thing, that there's just untowards amounts of paper. Now, if you're really technologically gifted and you don't mind not having those in paper form, you can have them in long sections of your computer where you store that information. But this is just... So this was from today, basically. I have the minutes of the Long Range Planning Committee. I have the minutes of the Lawn Bowling Advisory. I have the minutes of the Sun City in Focus. I have the agenda for today's candidate information meeting. I have a multi-page document on what the numbers were for each of the clubs, the chartered clubs that we have. And here is the third quarter report on participation numbers at all of our monitored activities. So basically, that was today. And most of us, I would say, probably have a section either of your living room floor, or if you have bookshelf space with binder after binder after binder after binder. So there's a lot of stuff that comes out to us. I don't have to read the Lawn Bowling Advisory Committee meeting summary if I don't want to. But as Chris said, there are sometimes when you think it would be good for me to know if there's anything big going on. You might skim it to see if there's anything really critical. I don't really care what the lawn bowl green speeds are this week as opposed to last week, but there might be some other information in there that would be important to know about.
Thank you. Commissions. We have a bid commission. We have an insurance commission. We have an investment commission. We have liaison positions to a variety of other organizations like SHOA, the Posse, the Fire Department, CAN. I'm going to forget someone, but there are several. Viewpoint, oh yes, Viewpoint Lake meets, and we have some responsibility to that group. In the interest of being more and more transparent, we are providing more additional meetings. We recently had a special session on the revised bylaws and policies. We are holding town halls that were not previously held. We'll be holding some town halls in October with regard to the budget. So all of that fits in to your day as well.
So I'm one of the folks that's on 5 committees and the bid commission. And we do care about lawn bowling speeds, just to let you know.
She does. I don't have to.
I know, she doesn't. I do. As far as time commitment, I'm one of the people that likes to come in. Tom was understating. He's here just about every single business day.
All the time.
All the time. I mean, like for hours working on stuff. I usually try to come in and spend at least a couple of hours. Some days, like today, I went and grabbed lunch other than I've been here today. It's as much as you want to make of it or as little, but bear in mind that the more you kind of have that opportunity to talk and bounce ideas, the more cohesive the board is as a whole, which is extremely important. You know, and we listen to inputs from members of our committees to help us also understand their point of view and what, you know, what they see the committee doing or whatever, and how that committee is going to advise or provide recommendation to the board. I mean, that's one thing. Our standing committees are extremely important, every single one of them, in giving us their opinions, their thoughts, recommendations on, so that we can make good, educated decisions in a fiduciary capacity for the rec centers of Sun City. You know, some, as Chris said, some weeks are 40, some weeks might be 45. You know, and you've got early morning stuff, you've got midday stuff, you've got nighttime stuff on the town halls and things. You'll be, you know, there'll be some afternoons, some evenings, that type of stuff. And don't get me wrong, there are days when I am frustrated. And I think my frustration is because, and I'm sure a lot of the board members, you get frustrated because you care and you want something to move quicker. But when you compare how rec centers of Sun City has been in years past to now, we're moving at lightning speed compared to some of the things that were being done in years past. You know, it's just going to take time. And I'm hopeful to be part of the change, to continue all the great work that the previous boards have done, and to continue to make us as transparent as possible and provide the opportunities for input to listen to what our members want.
I think the only thing I can add to what everybody else has said, and I agree with everything everybody has said, you'll also have very impromptu meetings. It's going to take up time in your day. Last weekend, I was on the patio of the North Golf Course drinking water, I assure you. Well, maybe not.
They have cameras there.
Yeah, maybe not. And there were a group of women sitting there, and they looked at me and they just went. Part of that was because a couple of them played golf with my mother, and they know me as Frida's boy. But mainly it was because they wanted to sit down, ask questions. They had curiosities about golf and other things. So you're going to have times when you run into people, they're going to notice that you are on the board, and they're going to have questions. And I think that's awesome, because that's one of the best ways, not only that you can impart information out to people, but you can also get their questions and concerns back to you. But just understand that as you're going around, people are going to bump into you and they're going to have questions, and that's part of your commitment also. But that's part of our service to the community.
So in summary, I think I heard 25 to 40, and there's maybe some low weeks and some higher weeks.
And we
Yes.
didn't tell you that we don't have meetings in July and August. And some people think because we don't have meetings in July and August that we are not here. But we are here. And we're working just as hard in July and August as we do the rest of the year. We just don't have meetings.
So there's an office where the board members meet.
Yes.
And are you restricted to the business hours of, 8 to 4, or?
We have a code. We can
Oh, good,
get in.
because I'm an early morning guy and sometimes a late in the evening guy.
Tom's early.
Yeah.
Tom's early. He's
Yeah.
usually.
Somehow I'm getting the impression that you guys think I live here.
You do. I saw the sleeping bag under your desk.
So actually, one of the changes that we are bringing forward for our bylaws is that it says that the board and its committees do not meet in July and August, and it's being changed to, as a general rule, we don't meet. So that was considered to be a time when you should feel free to be gone, you should feel free not to be there. But to give, for instance, in finance and budget, it's really, really difficult when you realize that you're having these town halls in October. If certain things aren't happening in July and August, you're not going to be able to stick to that time schedule. So the bylaws are being changed, pending approval, voting approval, to say that as a general rule, we don't meet during July and August, but
We have established, however, that you can participate electronically. So if you're out on vacation somewhere and we're having a meeting, you'll be able to converse with us.
I've been on the patio in Cabo answering emails in the past, so I know what that's about. I think that's really all I had. Any questions?
Yeah, one.
Go ahead.
Where do you derive your authority from? I'm on a board of directors for the fire department. We derive our authority from state law.
So we derive our authority from the Articles of Incorporation, which is the highest document that we have. We have the Articles of Incorporation, which establish what the raison d'etre of the organization is. What do you exist to do? We can't, it's really, really difficult to change. The Articles of Incorporation can be changed, but it's a very, very difficult process. And that is what gives this corporation the right to exist. And basically, our bylaws establish how we operate within that charter, which is...
We being the board.
Right.
Okay.
That within that charter, exactly, yeah. So,
Okay.
And only the members of the community can change the Articles of Incorporation. And sometimes our members don't necessarily understand that, and they will come forth with questions that are not even sometimes germane to the RCSC. And so that does happen from time to time.
Yeah, there is a lot of confusion about SHOA and the RCSC and the fact that we're very separate organizations. And although we have a liaison into them, just like I'm a liaison to the fire department, I have no responsibility with them, and they're completely separate organizations. And sometimes it's hard for people to understand because we're in the same area, but we have very different jobs and responsibilities, and we're separate organizations.
I've never wondered about that. I know.
A lot of people do, though.
Yeah.
they'll come to the exchange meetings and want to know about, putting in a traffic light at such and such an intersection, and that's just not, so we operate recreational facilities.
Right.
SHOA does have a roads commission, so they actually do have a way to impact that. But a lot of people also misunderstand and think that SHOA gets a portion of the annual assessments that are paid to be paid by members of RCSC. They don't. So SHOA has a recommended voluntary $25 per year contribution that they're looking for, and we encourage people, please pay that amount of money. They're doing an important job serving the same community, the same group of people, but with different responsibilities.
Just to note that we're governed under the Arizona revised statutes, Title 10, which is above our Articles of Incorporation. Okay.
Which is actually that's a status that not very many other organizations have. Even Sun City West is governed by Arizona Title 33, and we are under Arizona Title 10.
Thanks for all your answers.
I won't hold it against you that you're wearing a Buffalo Bills shirt
Hey,
there.
I'm proud to wear the shirt today.
All right, well, we'll have a discussion about that
I left the
later.
hat home, though.
So, you're a Buffalo Bills fan. How's your heart, though? Because I know that I have a really good friend. She's a Buffalo Bills fan, and sometimes she's wonderful, and sometimes she's on life support.
It's mostly my fingernails. I have them today.
They did well last night.
All right. Any other comments from board members or questions from anybody?
Are we going to finish our agenda?
If you have any questions, our email addresses are on the website. Ask us anyone at any time. Or if you bump into us, please ask us.
Well, let's just maybe just finish this off by another sort of a lightning roundup here. What makes a good board member? So just like popcorn fashion, what do you think makes a good board member? And I would like to just preface this by saying in the years that I have served here, I've served on a lot of different constellations of boards, and I have never felt as good about the constellation of a board as I do right now. So wonderful people, very collegiate board, and I'm happy to report that. All right, so what makes a good board member?
First thing is a commitment to the community. I mean, we're here because we have a desire to serve Sun City and the members of the Sun City community. And that's, I play golf a lot, like Tom, and people kind of think that, okay, well, you're just for things that are golf, and it can't be true that. You've got to be able to care and think about what's best for the corporation as a whole and for the membership as a whole. And as long as you keep those primary goals in mind, then other things are going to fall in place. But I think you really have to realize who you're serving and why you're serving them.
I would say you need to be a good listener, both of listening to members and whether it's at the exchange or catching a China painting or whatever. Also just being able to listen to other board members' point of view and being respectful that their point of view may be different than yours, but there probably is some middle ground that you can come up with that meets the needs of what's best for RCSC as a whole.
Reviewing all of the issues that need to be reviewed and to do what is best for the corporation, what is best for the community, and what is best for the members.
I think I might just sort of pick up on something that's already been said, actually, but it's not just a tolerance for, but also a welcome of dissenting views, with the understanding that good decisions usually are the result. They come out of the crucible of debate. And in that debate process, it's really important for people to be independent thinkers, but to be very collegial in the way that they interact with a variety of viewpoints.
So I would say commitment, caring, commitment to the community, commitment to do the right thing, even when you may actually not personally, you would like to see something different, but you're willing to do what's better for the better good, the greater good. Being balanced in your approach, definitely the ability to listen and to be able to listen with an open mind. And really caring. I think caring about the members, caring about the community is really important. And I'm sure you guys can tell I'm a feeler and not necessarily always a thinker, but I think caring is really important. But for the most part, being the ability to work well with others and to be open to consensus, because you're not always going to get everything you want, but being able to see other people's point of view and doing what's for the greater good. So even though this may not be 100% what you want, for overall it's good. And that ability to build consensus and to be part of a consensus process, I think, which is what I think Karen was talking about with being collegial. You can disagree, and there are going to be instances you do, but that ability to be open to what is for the greater good, I think, is very important.
Well, the greater good is a consistent theme, and I think you do need to care about the community, but at a deeper level, you need to care just as much for the Quilters Club as you do the Bridge Club, as you do the Pickleball Club, as you do anybody else, and you have to treat them all fairly. And you really can't come in with, I'm here for golf, or I'm here for pickleball, or I'm here for, that's not going to work in the long run. So I would urge you to think about having a broad point of view and we often talk about a fiduciary responsibility of the board members. And some of us talk about that's a duty to the corporation. I'm more, that's a duty to the membership, and some might equate those two, but I don't really. You owe a responsibility, if you're going to serve, to the memberships. And I want to do what I believe is in the best interest of the memberships as best I can. And I think that ultimately will serve you well.
I think I'd like to just close up by saying that if you do decide that you'd like to pick up a packet downstairs. Marcia's willing to go down with you now to do that. Connie is my co-chair on the Elections Committee, and we do try to establish phone contact. It's a courtesy call from the Elections Committee asking any of our candidates sort of on a monthly basis, is everything going okay? Have you run into any hurdles or problems? Is there anything that we can help you with? So that would be a next step, that we would be in contact with you, and you would have an opportunity, of course, at any time to approach us and ask or complain or whatever it is that you need to do. Okay? So thanks to everybody. Thanks to our audiovisual people, too, for your help with this, and good luck. And we hope that we'll see you again.
And we all get an hour of our lives back.
Thanks for coming.
This is a copyrighted production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.